Click on this on button. You can see that the light comes on, and I'll click on the off button. The light goes off. Light comes on, light goes off. Now let's look at how to make JavaScript to change the attribute value of an image, specifically the source attribute value of an image. Now, so here I have an index.html file, and I've linked that to my JavaScript file, that's this script.js file. Now we have two images, the bob on image, the bob on.gif image, and the bob off.gif image. In the HTML file, I'll just get in a number of elements. Now let's have an h2 element. I'll call that bob switch. Let's have a button element with an ID of on button, and the content will be turn on the lights. Now let's have an image element with an ID of bob image. Then the source will be, let's make the source to be first of all the bob off.gif image. Now lastly, let's have another button, and the ID will be off button, and the contents will be turn off the lights. Alright, so that's all for the HTML file. Now I'll preview this. Let's right click and preview and see what we have. I'll collapse this. Now so far this is what we have. You can see. So now let's go on to JavaScript file, and when we click on, the goal is to click on turn on the light, and the source value will change to the turn on .gif image, and when we click on the turn off the light, it will change to the turn off image. Now, so we have those two images here right there. Don't forget the spelling of the images are what? Turn off bob.gif and turn on.gif, right? So I'll go on to the JavaScript file and grab a number of elements in the HTML file. I'll grab the button elements, the on button elements, and I'll assign that to document.getElementById, and the ID of that on button is still on button. I would also grab the off button element. I'll assign that also to document.getElementById. The ID of that second button is off button. Then I want to grab the image element. Let's call that img element. Now we can also call this on button element and this one off button element. Okay, for the img element, we are going to the document and selecting it by the ID. So get element by ID. So the ID of that button of that image element is bob image. Don't forget. Let's check. The ID is bob image. That's this one. This is the image element, and the ID is bob image. Let's copy that and just paste. So also want to assign the image itself to variables. Bob of, let's call this bob of source. Spelling of the off image is bob of.gif. That's the file name of that off image. And the second image is the on image. Let's call this bob on source. Okay, and we'll assign this to the second image, that's bob on.gif. Now don't forget, we have two images, bob on.gif and bob off.gif. So that's where I got this from, and the spelling must be correct. Now, so what we want to do now is to construct two functions. Now the first function, I'll call it change to on image. Now this is the function that will be triggered when the turn on the light button is clicked. And what we want to simply do when that turn on the light button is clicked is to switch the source value to the bob on source. So we are grabbing the image element, that's this image element, img, and that's the source, that's .src, the source of that image. We want to reassign it to bob on source. And second function is for when the off button is clicked. So that will call that function change to off image. We assign the image element source to bob of source. That's this image when the turn off button is clicked. Now lastly, we want to add event listeners to that button. Now the button when clicked should change those source values. So, and the two buttons we have are the on button element and the off button element. So we'll grab those buttons, the on button element, down dot add event listeners. Now the event we are looking out for is a click event. So that's the first argument or first argument this will take. Then second argument will be the function itself that should be triggered when that click is made, and that's change to on image. Change to on image. Then secondly, we would grab the off button element and add an event listener to it. We are listening to also a click event, and the function that will be triggered will be the change to off button function. So let's check that. So I'll click on this on button. You can see that the light comes on, and I'll click on the off button, the light goes off. Light comes on, light goes off. So that's one way of using JavaScript. JavaScript can be used to change attribute values of HTML elements.